more Hufflepuff ministers of magic than any other house. Surprisingly, my birth mother said that Muggleborns do best in Gryffindor. They're the closest thing to a house of rebels we'll find, and apparently they embrace Muggleborns and half-bloods just to thumb their noses at traditionalist purebloods. They're also the ones least interested in formality and etiquette, so they'll be more forgiving of minor social mistakes. Of course, she was a Gryffindor herself, so she might be biased.
Hermione rose.
Well, you've given me a lot to think about, Mr. Potter, but I suppose I'd better go and find Neville, Mr. Longbottom, I mean, and see what luck he's had with his toad.
She turned at the door.
Mr. Potter, what books would you recommend to learn more about what we talked about?
Harry smiled, genuinely this time, and he rattled off the names of 3 etiquette books. If they don't have those in the Hogwarts library, just ask, and I'll let you borrow my copies. Thank you. She paused while trying to remember how the people in Pride and Prejudice talked to one another.
And Mr. Potter, if I am not being presumptuous in saying, I would be gratified if you would call me Hermione.
She said with a smile of her own. Harry laughed.
You are not being presumptuous at all, Hermione, and I would be equally pleased if you called me Harry.
She nodded and left the compartment as Harry returned to his etiquette book, pleased at having made his first tentative friendship. About 10 minutes later, the door flew open and Jim entered, along with the red-headed boy Harry had encountered twice before.
Hey, there you are,
exclaimed Jim.
I've been looking for you for ages. This is Ron Weasley. He'll be in our class. Ron, this is my brother Harry. Good to meet you, Harry,
said Ron enthusiastically.
Likewise,
said Harry blandly. Internally, he thought.
Oh yeah, definitely Gryffindor.
Out loud, he said.
Actually, I think we've already met. We were getting fitted together at Madame Malkin's. Oh yeah, I remember you. You should have told me you were Jim's brother. Well, I just found, never mind. Let's just say it was a stressful day and I didn't think about it. Well, anyway,
said Jim, dropping into the seat next to Harry, with Ron opposite them.
I'm sorry we got caught up with those photographers. It's a pain sometimes. But Ron here introduced me to his brothers and they introduced me to the Gryffindor Quidditch team.
He paused.
Say, do you know anything about Quidditch, Harry? Not much. I know it's a strange combination of water polo, dodgeball and capture the flag, but played in the air on high-speed flying broomsticks. Uakari, I don't know what any of those are, but don't worry. Dad was an awesome chaser when he was in school and he got me my first practice broom for my 4th birthday. We'll get you up to speed in no time.
Harry, who had spent his 4th birthday learning how to cook bacon and scrambled eggs for the Dursleys, with the threat of a frying pan to the head if anything was burnt, smiled that painful smile again. I'm looking forward to it. Suddenly, the compartment doors opened again, and yet another person barged in. This one was a thin, blonde boy with aristocratic features. Behind him out in the corridor stood 2 stocky boys who would probably grow into hulking brutes within 5 years.
I was told that James Potter, Jr., the boy who lived, was in this car,
said the newcomer imperiously.
Is it true? He is,
said Harry with some bemusement. And you are?
Malfoy, Draco Malfoy of the ancient and noble house of Malfoy.
Jim and Ron both sniggered at the boy's pomposity, but for some reason, he focused his ire solely on Ron.
I can tell what family you belong to. Red hair, freckles, hand-me-down robes, undoubtedly a Weasley.
He sneered. Both Ron and Jim turned red in anger, while Harry's eyes narrowed. He recognized the name Malfoy and was quite surprised by how rudely the scion of such an important house was acting, not to mention the oddly specific insults Malfoy had made towards someone he obviously didn't know before just now. Ignoring Ron, Draco turned back to Harry, but was surprised to finally notice that there were 2 very similar-looking boys in the car. He made a guess and hoped it wasn't the one a chocolate stain on his shirt, who was presently giving him an angry glare.
So are you James Potter?
He asked the more reputable-looking one. Harry shook his head and pointed at Jim, who had stood up and moved threateningly close to Draco. The 2 thugs outside tensed and readied themselves for a fight.
I'm Jim Potter,
he said.
What's it to you?
Draco held his hands up to show he meant no threat.
Potter, please, I apologize if I offended you in any way, but you're a national icon and the heir to an ancient and noble house. You're obviously going to need help finding the right sort of friends. I can help steer you away from the wrong crowd.
From Draco's posture, it was clear.
The wrong crowd?
Included Ron, whose face twisted into a mask of anger.
I can find the right sort of friend without your help, Death Eater.
Sneered Jim. Draco's eyes narrowed, while Harry watched the display, idly wishing he'd brought popcorn.
Obviously, there is no possibility of me being a Death Eater since I'm 11, and if you refer to my father, then you should remember that the Wisengamot found him not guilty. So you should speak a little more thoughtfully, Potter, unless you wish to be sued for slander. Oh, come off it, Malfoy,
said Ron contemptuously.
Your family is as Slytherin as they come, and there's never been a dark wizard who wasn't a slimy Slytherin, from you-know-who to Grindelwald all the way back to Salazar Slytherin himself. Oh, well, that's just nonsense,
snapped Harry irritably.
First of all, no one knows what house you-know-who was in or even if he went to Hogwarts, and Grindelwald definitely went to Durmstrang. Yes, most of the convicted Death Eaters were Slytherins, but there were also Death Eaters from other houses. Barty Crouch Jr. was a Ravenclaw, and Sirius Black, you-know-who's lieutenant, was a Gryffindor. And anyway, the worst Dark Lord to have ever attended Hogwarts was Emeric the Evil back in the 14th century, and he actually claimed that it was his Gryffindor nature that gave him the courage to defy all mundane standards of decency and morality.
The other boys in the compartment looked at Harry as if he'd grown a second head.
You sure know a lot about dark wizards,
said Ron. Harry shrugged.
It was all in the rise and fall of the dark arts.
He turned to look at Jim.
I bought it to read the section about you and you-know-who, but it had chapters on all the other major British dark wizards since the founding of Hogwarts. Admittedly, most were Slytherins, but Gryffindor and Ravenclaw have each had plenty dark wizards, and even the Hufflepuffs have produced one in the last 5 centuries.
Draco stared at him in confusion.
Who are you? Since when has the boy who lived had a twin brother?
Harry stood up to look Draco in the eye.
Since birth, obviously, and you were mistaken earlier. I, Harry Potter, am heir presumptive to the ancient and noble house of Potter, and while I will not be as blunt as my brother, I must tell you, Mr. Malfoy, that you have made a bad first impression. I think it would be best if you leave before things escalate into something unpleasant.
Draco studied Harry carefully. So be it. Then he left the compartment and headed down the corridor, minions in tow. Jim turned to grin at Harry.
That was awesome, ha? Leave before things escalate into something unpleasant. Wicked. I bet if you talk to those muggles like that, they wouldn't give you any problems at all.
Harry's head snapped towards Jim, and his eyes lit up as if he'd been slapped. To his side, Ron asked what Jim had meant about muggles, but his voice sounded strangely far away. Jim, suddenly unnerved, looked back and forth between Harry and Ron before he finally spoke.
It's nothing, Ron, forget I mentioned it. Hey ha, you want to learn to play Exploding Snap?
Harry studied his brother as if examining a bug. Then he considered the question, not the question of, do you want to learn to play Exploding Snap, but the much more pressing question of, do you want to spend the next 7 years pretending to smile when you'd rather snarl or scream? And he made his decision.
Actually, right now, I'd like to go find the loo,
he said brightly.
I assume this train has won if the ride is 6 hours long. Oh yeah,
said Jim.
We passed the restrooms on the way here. Just follow in the direction the 3 mini-Death Eaters went.
Thanks, Jim. Harry stepped past his brother and out the door, closing it behind him. He walked a few feet down the corridor and then, on impulse, crept back to the edge of the compartment he'd just left. Then he listened.
No offense, Jim, but your brother is a little weird. I know when he was a baby, Mum and Dad thought he was going to be a squib, so they sent him to live with Muggle relatives. Apparently they were kind of mean to him and he blames our parents. He's being a right baby about it, to be honest, but Mum insisted I stay close to him until he gets over his anger. Whatever.
Harry exhaled very slowly. Then he turned and moved quickly down the corridor and into the next car. Malfoy and his as yet unnamed goons were up ahead.
Mr. Malfoy.
He called out. Malfoy stopped and turned as Harry walked up to the trio.
What do you want, Potter? I thought you'd made your feelings quite clear. I did, and to be fair, Malfoy, you did make a poor first impression. Happily, I don't make snap judgments based on first impressions, and while I can also decide for myself who the right sort of people are, I won't be influenced by my father and brother's biases in the process. Now, I don't know yet where I'll be sorted, but I hope you and I can have, at the very least, an amiable relationship regardless of our sortings. We are the future of our respective families, after all. I find it unlikely, Potter, that there can ever be an amiable association between a Slytherin and a Gryffindor. Then we're in luck, Malfoy, because I think it's highly unlikely that either of us is going to be a Gryffindor.
And then Harry stuck out his hand, and after a second of hesitation, Draco took it. 7 hours later, the Sorting Hat whispered into Harry Potter's head, "Oh good, I was afraid you were going to be difficult about this." And then, in a booming voice, it yelled out,
Slytherin.